put this video together 20 minutes, 30 minutes ago.
Because one day it will grow up
and it's already processing to YouTube. And AI has improved it. I can say that.
China actingly, with government support, going to steal foreign technologies and foreign intellectual property. So this is the dynamic shift. The U.S. doesn't do that. Most liberal democracies in the world don't engage in that. They don't steal another country's technology and then give it to their own commercial institutes. I mean, and that's the big difference in the way China operates.
And given the level of this that you just laid out, what is the solution here? How can the U.S. counter that?
The answer is not what we're doing now, because you look at the example of the FBI, and the FBI says they have a China case that opens once every 12 hours. That's 365 times 2. That's 730 cases a year spread over 56 field offices. And if each one of these cases takes a year to 2 years to wrap up, you're already backlogged thousands of cases. The reality is we're not structured to deal with this. The U.S., most governments are not structured to deal with this. It takes a different type of relationship with private industry, and we have to get out of the mentality of trying to arrest our way out of the situation. It's just not going to happen. So the reality is the United States needs a strategic approach towards countering China, and to be honest, to forcing it into behaving by global norms. You know, compete the way everybody else does. Everyone's happy if that happens. But it needs a strategy to get there, which involves all of government and involves its private sector as well.
And how would the U.S. force the Chinese Communist Party to comply with international laws? Is that economic leverage? What leverage would it be?
It's all. It's the same way China's playing. It's all mechanisms of government, of national power. It's economic, it's information, it's diplomacy, it's intelligence, it's cyber, all those things. And when China does something, an egregious act like steals, as they did health data in the case of Momentum, steals data on 69 million people. The United States has to respond to that, not just arresting 4 people, not just indicting 4 people, but saying, fine, ABC businesses can't do business anywhere in the United States. You can't fly on any carriers. And by the way, the same is going to apply for our allies too. That's the type of pressure that we have to bring to China, because otherwise they're going to continue to take advantage. Right now, there are no consequences for them. And that's the key failure in American policy. Right? There is no deterrence because there are no consequences. So a person gets arrested. So a person gets indicted. So they get publicly shamed. It hasn't even proved remotely close to stopping, this espionage onslaught.
Nick Eftimiadis, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
Today, we're going to do things a little bit differently. Before we meet our panel, we're going to start with a survivor from the Supernova Music Festival ambush. Nick Jeharav, you were there. You escaped, and I know some of your friends didn't. They were murdered, kidnapped. Our hearts are really with you, so thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Tell us how you're holding up, and what do you know of the situation of friends that have gone missing? Do you know anything?
Yeah, well, today was tougher than most days. And I woke up really heartbroken, and I don't know if I kind of like felt it. And I woke up and there was another friend that's gone today. Well, not today, but they found confirmed that he's dead. Yeah, today I didn't even go to the funeral. I was just I couldn't. Yeah, tough time.
Can you share a bit of how it went down for you, what happened?
Yeah. So we got there, me and my 2 friends, at around 1 a.m. Dancing, enjoying music, enjoying people, friends. And then it was around 6 a.m., 6:30, something like that. Watching beautiful, the sun rises beautifully. I look up in the sky and brief second, I thought it was fireworks. And once I, got my wits, I was like, I looked at my, turned to my friends and I said, I think we're getting shot. Like, we're getting bombed. And as soon as I said that, the music cuts off. Everybody's running in different directions, it's kind of like, it was sort of chaos. We were on the ground and, rockets were shot. But in my head, it's like, it's rockets. It's how messed up, this is how messed up the situation in Israel is. That we're so used and accustomed to getting bombed by rockets that we're like, okay, there's rockets, there's Iron Dome, one day, sorry, my friend there. There's rockets, and it passes by. You don't really have much to do because you're in an open area. So my friends wanted to leave. I told them, let's hang out a bit because at the moment we don't have anywhere to go. There's going to be a lot of traffic because there's thousands of people trying to escape at once. Being close to a car is not the most, it's not the safest thing to do. So we hung around there for 30 minutes, around 30 minutes. That's when I heard shots, like gunfire. And I told my friends, let's get in the car. We got into the car, we drove outside, and we realized the mayhem. Both roads were blocked. And we tried to escape through the road. The cop was telling us to go through the road. And while I'm saying this is we're getting shot by rockets. You can hear them falling down. You can hear them getting shot in the sky. The car is not moving much because there's a lot of traffic. So we were trying to move, slowly, and that's when we started hearing the shots. I started hearing the gunfire ricocheting off of cars really close to us. I grabbed my friends and told them, let's get out. We started running, heading for about 20 minutes, probably 20, 30 minutes, just running straight, like on the road. And then we stopped, trying to look back. Once we heard the shots were a little further away, we looked back. We couldn't really see much what was happening. We're all kind of like don't know what to do. Shots firing from all different directions. I told my friends, I looked at them, I said, this is not the time to panic. This is not the time. We don't have time to fear. We read ourselves and we said we have one objective, and it's to keep moving and get out of here. I opened the map and we went straight east, away from the border for around three hours probably, walking, running, while getting shot at from all different directions. I heard all types of shootings, guns, machine guns, grenades, RPGs, and then the rockets weren't even a concern. Rockets we're still getting shot by rockets, but it wasn't even a concern because you can hear the other shots really close to you. Yeah, so we were running away. We found a barn. That's where we stopped for like a pit stop. Grab some water. There was running water there. There was a couch. Kind of like just rest for a quick second. That's when I looked in the internet when we realized what was happening. We were all like 3 towns right beside us were conquered. And you're between those 3 towns. And that's when you realize the magnitude. I was shocked, getting the sense of what was happening. Everybody tried to call to police. Nobody's answering. Total desperation. We got to a friend of mine, his wife and sister-in-law. She has connections in some sort of higher authorities. Everybody was just saying, stay put, don't go anywhere. And really, by chance, I got rescued by ordinary citizens. They understood this. Ordinary plain citizens who understood the situation and didn't wait for nobody to act, and took courage and wit and drove to the place of the party and started picking up people. Probably saved hundreds of lives, really. thank them a lot. Yeah, after that we got to a town nearby with shelter, food, and from there they took us to a bus to a bigger city, and from there our parents took us. But I want to say one thing: my story does not even come close to the atrocities that people went through there, that are going through, like, you know, with what they've seen. I'm lucky. I'm lucky to be alive, and I'm lucky that I was just lucky. Really. Yeah, the stories I'm hearing, the videos I'm watching on Telegram, really, it's just they decapitated babies, they raped women, they kidnapped my friends. A lot of my friends are dead. I've been to 3 funerals already, and today I missed one because I just couldn't go anymore. So yeah.
Those who are kidnapped, do you have any information about them at all?
No information at the moment. Nobody knows anything. I'm sure. Yeah, I've seen videos when I was on the bus to the safe town. They showed somebody that was close. You know, we were jam packed there. Somebody saw the videos online, and I've seen people that I've danced with that same night that are kidnapped at the moment in Gaza.
Are you talking to their families? Just wondering, how are they holding?
I don't know them personally. The kidnapped ones. But yeah, I've been to 3 funerals of friends. Yeah. And it's just, you know, everybody, there's no person in Israel at the moment that has not been touched by this situation. That it doesn't know somebody. You know, it's in Israel we have a trans scene, and there's a trans scene in the world, but in Israel it's very tight. So I know a lot of people it's not that I know them personally. I know who they are, and every time we see each other, it's nothing but love. You know, we went to celebrate love, peace, and music. And you know all these people, you've seen them for these past 7 years. I've seen these people in parties, you know. Even if I don't know them, I feel like I know them. And I can see them and going through this, you know, some are missing, some are dead. My close friends are dead. It's just, yeah, unbelievable.
Does it help to share your story? We appreciate you coming and speaking with us, but do you think it helps?
Yeah, it helps. Also, the amount of love I've been getting from people I don't even know. You know, Americans who just heard my story and reached out and tried to help, tried to, you know, pray for me, and it really does help. I am getting overwhelmed by it, to be honest. There's more and more and more. And today in the morning I woke up, I was supposed to do an interview in the morning, and I canceled it because it was just, you know, I can't. It's also human. Yeah. And it's just, you know, every time you have to bring it up, you have to think, you have to talk about it, you have to remember it, you have to, you know, we have to keep talking about it. Yeah. But I'm just. Yeah.
So we're going to have to wrap up shortly, but is there anything in particular you really want people to know about out there about going through this, your country going through this?
Yeah, I want everybody to get informed, see what's happening, and to understand that we cannot let this kind of evil exist in our world. This is everybody's responsibility, because it could have been any other country. They don't look just for Israel. You know, and we've seen this happen in the United States. This happened in Europe. This is happening all over the world. It's not just our problem. This is the world's problem, and we must fight this evil and conquer it and spread love and unity and peace.
Thank you, Nick. I really appreciate it, and please do there. He served as a political advisor in Israel's foreign ministry and worked for the Ministry of Defense. In the late 2000s, he served in the Second Lebanon War, Operation Cast Lead in Gaza. He still serves in Israel's reserves. In 2014, he was named one of the 10 most inspiring global Jewish leaders by the Jewish Telegraph Agency. Greg, welcome.
Thank you.
Next, we have Dor Leventer. He's the CEO of Epoch Magazine in Israel. He spent his childhood in the northern border beside Lebanon under rocket fire from Hezbollah. He was a combat officer and a lieutenant in the Armored Corps and a commander in officers' school at the end of his service. Now he hosts a show, Thought Provoking, for Epoch Israel. Last week, he's been reporting on the ground, interviewing survivors, their families, experts from the intelligence community and security forces. Dor, we know it's Shabbat and you should be spending time with your family. We're very grateful to have you with us. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you for having me.
Finally, we have Jonathan Tobin, the editor-in-chief of the Jewish News Syndicate, as well as a senior contributor at The Federalist and a columnist at Newsweek. Jonathan's column, View from America, appeared for many years in the Jerusalem Post. His work has also appeared in Israel Hayom, the Christian Science Monitor, The Forward, Britain's Jewish Chronicle, the New York Sun, among many others. Jonathan lectures widely across the United States on college campuses and to Jewish organizations and synagogues. He tours North America debating political and Jewish issues, and he's appeared on CNN, BBC Radio, Fox News, Newsmax, I-24 News, and many others to discuss politics, foreign policy, and Jewish issues. Jonathan, welcome.
Thank you.
Dor, I'm going to start with you. You're in Israel. We've already heard from Nick some of his stories of what he saw, but can you tell us, you've been talking to people on the ground, you're on the ground there, give us an understanding of what things are like right now.
So you probably heard a lot already. Things on the ground right now is that Israel prepared to ground invasion inside Gaza, and they already notified the Gaza civilian people, communities to leave Gaza, go south, preparing for the invasion. They also, by the way, I don't know if you know that, but there is a propaganda combat going on between the Hamas and Israel. Hamas is using a potential media stream to tell the civilians of Gaza that this is all a lie. You should stay in Gaza. The Israeli army spreading lies. So the Hamas is really trying to keep the Gaza civilians inside, so you could see in the future all the civilians, all the photos and everything, to make more pressure on Israel to avoid hurting any civilians. Beside that, it's been a week of horror. You just heard Nick. Things are not. People are quite shocked in Israel.
Let me ask you, two things you said are interesting. One is, I don't know if people realize that that's kind of normal for the Israeli army to warn people in Gaza when they're trying to hit targets to get out of the way. That's actually normal. But also they're told to go south. Is Egypt letting people through the border in the south?
So it's a little bit more complex than that, because Israel doesn't have any intention to hurt civilians. It's bad for Israel, actually, because then they'll just get more pressure from the international community, and it will hurt the ability of the Israeli forces to go forward and to attack more and to get forward with eliminating the Hamas terror group. Second thing is that Egypt doesn't seem to really want to get a flood of refugees from Gaza, including terrorists. Another thing is the people that were kidnapped. Israel also is afraid that they will try to bring those people somehow out of Gaza, and this way there will be no chance to track them down. So there is a lot going on here. It's not just a one-way scenario. Israel is doing, there is a slogan for the Israeli army. It's the most moral army in the world. That's what we say in the army, and Israel is doing their best. But this is a time of war, and Israel is in war against evil. against terror group that just butchering people. The things that Nick said, he didn't say it all. I can tell you that even the things you hear on Telegram or on TV, it's not all. I interviewed people from Zaka. It's the service that's responsible to get the first aid to every place there is an accident or a fear of people dying. So those are people that doing this work for 23 years, 27 years. They tell me they never saw anything like that in their life, ever. The rabbi of the Gaza division, things like, I think you mentioned some of them. I'm talking about babies being hanged with their mom's bras in a row, babies tied on a fence, some burnt, some shot, in front of their parents, in order to abuse the parents before butchering the parents. You talked about girls being raped multiple times. You can see the evidence. I don't want to get into this too much, but it's things that if you would think on the worst horror movie you ever could imagine, you couldn't come up with that. You couldn't. Those are not human beings. This is pure evil, and this is what we fight.
Gentlemen, Greg, do you want to jump in there? You spent a lot of time in the Israeli army too. I know you've got a lot of contacts. Go ahead.
Israel has to transition from the most moral army in the world to the most lethal army in the world. And significant actors in the region have to be held to account, not just Hamas, which the stated goals of the Israeli government is to both eradicate the organization and to remove their ability to govern in Gaza. Egypt needs to seek a transition from the Sinai Peace Accords to allow them to deploy more troops than would otherwise be allowed under the current agreement with Israel, to create a buffer between Rafah, which is in southern Gaza, and El Arish, which is in the northern Sinai Peninsula. The United States has to deploy forces beyond its two carrier battle groups that it currently has in the eastern Mediterranean, and needs to park 2 more aircraft carriers in the Indian Ocean next to Iran. And Israel has to do whatever it takes within the bounds allowed by international law, the laws of war, to completely erase Hamas and its supporters from the map. If that does not happen, the tragedy that we heard about from Nick and the massacres and the other horror stories that we heard about, both from secondary accounts and primary accounts, will repeat again. Israel has lost its ability to project deterrence, not just to Hamas, but to all of its other enemies in the region. If it is not able to reestablish deterrence through defeating the Hamas terror organization, it will get to the point where it will be attacked again. Forget about humanitarian necessity. Forget about what I think is the previous 15 years of conflict against Hamas since Operation Cast Lead that I served in, where people spent more time thinking about sending first aid to those civilians in Gaza than protecting their own soldiers. The gloves must come off, and this must be the war to end all Palestinian resistance. Otherwise, we'll see this again.
Important point, because Israel, I mean, the U.S. has backed Israel all this time because they are the buffer to all of these states. And if that buffer is gone, it's a problem. Jonathan, you want to jump in, I'm sure.
Yes, I think the important point to realize here, the horror stories that we're learning, that are hard to think about, let alone to express, could cause some moral clarity here in the United States. And yet, what I'm seeing and hearing in much of the enlightened opinion in the corporate mainstream press is the opposite of moral clarity. You know, I'm not that worried, as disgusted as I am about the demonstrations in the streets of New York and other cities applauding these stuff. These are horrible people calling for horrible things, you know, applauding Nazis. It's hard to imagine deserving of condemnation, whether it's Black Lives Matter movement or other factors and groups on the far left. I'm much more worried about the pundits at the New York Times and the opinion influencers at the Washington Post who have real influence with the Biden administration, who are already sounding a chorus of not merely caution about what Israel is doing, and not merely virtue signaling that they are just as worried about Palestinian casualties as they are about Israeli victims. They are acting as a lobby to try and stop Israel from taking down Hamas. These voices of the foreign policy establishment, of the so-called foreign policy wise men, they are already arraigned against Israel to stop the IDF even before it acts. And that's where the real action will be. Will the Biden administration stick to its full support of Israel, full stop, as Biden said? Biden's statements in last week have been great, but will he stick with it once it starts getting complicated and messy? And that's what I'm worried about.
Okay, well,
Like privilege and therefore and oppressors of Palestinian people of color. This is not, this is false, both about what Israel is, both about who Israelis are, and about Palestinians. But it creates a permission slip for anti-Semitism, for anti-Zionism, which is anti-Semitism. And it builds a lobby for demonization of Israel and creates a force among progressives, growing intersectional wing of the Democratic Party that is against Israel. Democrats are now more for the Palestinians than Israel, as the tracking polls show us. Republicans are pro-Israel, independents are pro-Israel, and that's what keeps most America pro-Israel. But that's the problem, and that will create the pressure point for the Biden administration, at whether it's going to, as Greg says, stick to its interests and defend Israel and take out Hamas. There is an overwhelming surge of opinion on the left that will be against that. And everything that the foreign policy establishment, that the corporate media has been pushing about the Middle East for 30 years, not just this last week, will militate towards stopping Israel from taking out Hamas, from not understanding that Hamas is the moral equivalent of the Nazis, and the only way to defeat them and get any hope for peace is to deal with them as the United States and the Allies did with the Nazis in World War II, which is to say, completely defeat them.
all right, we've got to take another break now, and then we will be right back, and we'll